So, good evening and welcome to the Royal Netherlands Institute in Rome, and a cordial welcome also to those who are joining us remotely. I'm Maria Bonaria Urban, and I'm Director of Study in History at this institute. And it's a great pleasure to welcome you to this second KNIR dialogue of the series on Roman Museums Legacy. A very special welcome to our guest, Francesco Stocchi, Artistic Director of the MAXI, for having accepted our invitation, and to Dr. Lori Cosmo, KNIR Museum Fellow and organizer of this lecture series. Before giving the floor to Lori for a proper introduction of our guest, I would like to say a few words about our institution and our mission. The KNIR is the largest of the 5 Dutch scientific institutes abroad, and we serve as an important bridge between the Dutch, the Italian, and the international academic community present in Rome. In so doing, we aim to support research projects carried out by early career and senior scholars affiliated to the 6 Dutch universities partner of the KNIR. There are some new faces in the room, so maybe it's interesting to say something about the history of this institute. The KNIR was established at the beginning of the 20th century to carry out research in the Vatican archives that had opened 20 years earlier under the Pope Leo XIII. The KNIR soon expanded its area of activity to other fields of research, in particular art history, Asian study, and archaeology. Since 1933, the Institute has had its own building designed by the Italian engineer Gino Cipriani and the Dutch architect Jan Stout. The building is located in the Valle Giulia, an area which was allocated for international institutions during the fascist regime. After the Second World War, the KNIR played an important role in the reestablishment of the scientific and cultural ties between the Netherlands and Italy. Since the early 90s, the Institute has focused primarily on the academic world. And since then, the Institute has attracted a growing number of students and scholars. There are many interests about our research and research project, but maybe I could mention today that one of our main research topics is the history of Rome, or better said, all what is about the dynamics and the diversity of meanings of Rome that has been envisioned as the center of the world, from the Roman Empire to 19th century nationalism to 20th century fascism, and from Rome as the site of the foundation of the European Economic Community to the present World Heritage Site. And starting out from our traditional focus areas and topics within Italian studies, we are now also looking beyond Italy, the Netherlands, and Europe, and we view the whole world in relation to Italy and Rome. So our new motto, we can say, at the core of our agenda in Rome is Rome in the world and the world in Rome. Among the many projects we are developing at the moment, I would like to mention a new project called Settled Colonial Paradigms, Classical Receptions, Territoriality, Legality, and Indigeneity, in collaboration with the University of Groningen, in which we aim to explore the role of classic colonization after antiquity up until the fascist enterprises in Africa. Considering the multiple configuration of Rome at the center of power, heritage and museums have always been crucial and therefore a recurring theme in our research agenda. Among the several KNIR fellowships that we offer to Dutch and international scholars who collaborate with us, it is therefore not surprising that we have created the position of Museum Fellow. With this fellowship, we intend to study the role of museums as a window to further explore how collecting and displaying is a major process of knowledge construction, but also a way to explore power dynamics. Given the long tradition of museums, Rome is the perfect place to investigate the role and the future of such institutions. And it is no coincidence that our first guest in this series of KNIR Dialogues with Roman Museums Director was Andrea Vigliani, Director of the Museo delle Civiltà, the museums which preserves the collection of the former colonial museum in Rome. I'm sure that Lori will tell more about this lecture series, so it's time to give the floor to Lori, and I wish you all a fruitful and rewarding dialogue. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Maria, for that lovely introduction. It is my pleasure as KNIR Museum Fellow to welcome you today to the second in our series of KNIR Dialogues, which present a set of public lectures and conversations with directors of important museums in Rome that are particularly engaged in institutional introspection. It is our hope that in presenting these dialogues, that audiences can learn more about the legacies that Roman museums choose to reflect on today and the challenges and solutions for reinterpreting the past in the present and for the future. These talks are also part of a current project of mine in Rome and at Leiden University that will culminate in an international conference titled Legacies: Why Museums Matter. Museums in Rome are among the oldest and most famous in the world, prized for their outstanding collections, collecting histories and architecture. Together, they present a full range of Western European museum history in one of the most consequential of historic cities. Roman museums begin with 15th century papal gifts of ancient bronze statues to the Capitoline Hill and progress to world-class Baroque-era private collections, the labyrinthine Vatican museums, national museums of world civilizations, antiquities, modernism, and an archistar institution for contemporary art, bringing the eternal city's cultural life up to the present moment. Today, we focus on Rome's archistar institution, the Maxi, which is the National Museum of 21st Century Art. As Italy's largest museum of contemporary art, the Maxi is a showcase of exploratory architecture, weaving interior and exterior spaces designed by the late architect Zaha Hadid, which opened in Rome in 2010. It collects and displays temporary exhibitions of contemporary art and architecture. The 21st century is a particularly engaging moment to study the history of museums. Along with pressing concerns of new ways to make old art accessible, global art, decolonization, and the social and political responsibilities of culture, museums and their buildings present us with a set of material and ideological inheritances, even as in the case of the Maxi, which is less than 15 years old, whose purpose in the present may be continuously questioned and interpreted. Now it is my special privilege to introduce you to our speaker, Francesco Stocchi. Francesco Stocchi is the artistic director of the Maxi. For those of us at the KNIR, it is of particular interest that Francesco came to Rome, or came back to Rome, from his post as curator of modern and contemporary art at the Museum Boijmans van Benniggen in Rotterdam. He's been back in Rome a year, directing the Maxi, and he is also director of Foglio Arte, which is the supplement of the newspaper Foglio. He has a broad and quite international curatorial career. In 2021, he co-curated the 34th edition of the Sao Paulo Biennale. And in 2022, he was curator in charge of the Swiss Pavilion at the 59th Venice Biennale. He has published numerous exhibition catalogs and artist monographs, teaches, writes, and lectures regularly on art and visual culture, and it is a great honor to have him with us today. Thank you for coming.
Dankjewel, Lori. Thank you for everyone. Thank you, Lori Cosmo, for the invitation. Thank you for all the team at KNIR. I appreciate deeply this series, which comes as a wonderful surprise to see how an institute such as KNIR gives importance and attention to the territory. And we know that culture is based on exchange, and that thing that's a wonderful way to establish and to develop conversations. So I also to stress on the idea of a dialogue and expressive vocabulary. I usually don't write presentations. I like to be more colloquial. Also to avoid the transition from the written expression to the verbal expression. And I think that's can be even more of an idea of real exchange. Just two words on to add on the introduction by Lori of where I come from and what is my general preoccupations in my work, and then I will dig into what we're doing at Maxi. It's been just a year, so everything is in process, and I'll tend to be extremely transparent. I inherited this from Dutch culture, so everything will be. I will just express feelings, intentions, and what is to be director of a museum today, which is an extremely challenging, therefore interesting times of renewal of such ancient idea of institution. First, I would like to congratulate KNIR on the title, because I couldn't think of two terms like museum, two words, museum and Roma, that convey best the idea of legacy in two different ways, of course. And so to read Roman Museum Legacies, it's extremely strong, and actually it's a wonderful expression of what to do with what we inherited to develop even further a history which is basically a history of our cultures and our identities. I'll try to be very short in the introduction, but I started as assistant to an artist in my late teenager years. Up till then, when I was 20, I was working at the atelier of Nunzio, a sculpture in Rome. So my apprentissage was really on the creative process, on the crisis of the artist, on the problem of creation, and I didn't even know what was to be a curator. And I have to say that my career or my history was based on negations. So I soon understood that I didn't want, or I didn't have the skills and the capacity to be an artist. I wasn't much interested in the market and in being a dealer or working in galleries. So that was already clear. And then through writing and through conversation to artists, I found out that exhibition making was a way to express ideas that are synthesis from my inner self and the society we live in. So I started as a independent curator, so which means carries a sort of instability, but at the same time a sense of emergency to express your work. And especially you as a independent curator, you hardly happen to work on the same place, so every time is a new concept, is a new adventure. And this lasted for about 12, 15 years. Then there was a shortlist call from the Museum van Beuningen in Rotterdam. And so I moved, I was living in Vienna at the time, and then I moved to Rotterdam. And it was my first experience in an institution, and my first experience to be in charge of a legacy, of a collection, besides the exhibition program. So working with following the work of your predecessor, the collection of Boijmans is outstanding. It's 175,000 artworks from late medieval times to contemporary, which is quite extraordinary, not just in terms of its richness, but also its identity. Boijmans is one of the few museums in the world that doesn't carry this usual division between a classic collection, let's say from ancient times until 19th century, and then the modern era. I would say Louvre stops when Pompidou starts. National Gallery in London stops when Tate collection. In Boijmans, it's all under the same roof, and therefore you don't have an encyclopedic approach, but more a universal approach to the continuity of art. And most importantly, what interests us is that contemporary art is not seen as an external identity within art. There is art, usually in the general perception, there is art history and then contemporary art, which of course is not filtered by history. But if you carry that continuous legacy, and in the case of Boijmans, it's about 9 centuries, connections become much more fluid, which doesn't mean necessarily that you need to exhibit Rembrandt with Richard Serra, but there is a sense of deepness and of legacy that is inherited also in the contemporary program, and these I found outstanding. For this reason, even due to my beginnings of a career of independent curatorship, I asked since the day first at Boijmans if I could have the chance on the side, on weekends, on the night shifts, to work on personal projects. And therefore that gave me a balance, which was accepted, and that gave me a balance to be able to work on public spaces, to work on different environments rather than Boijmans, also to calibrate intentions and scopes. Here we have an image down to the right here. It's a work, an exhibition project did with Giuseppe Pennone at the Terme di Caracalla. So it was a clear intervention between two modalities of art inherited with architecture, Caracalla and these bronze tree casts by Giuseppe Pennone. And on the top left is an image from an exhibition I curated with Rem Koolhaas of Sol LeWitt. It was entitled Between the Lines, and the idea was to try to extract and all the emotions that are part of the minimal art and conceptual movement. So it was really an exercise of experiment, which we had the chance to develop together, and us at the same time two different approaches: an architectural approach by Koolhaas and a curatorial approach. in my last years of Boijmans, the museum had to close for renovation, but at the same time, which was a result of extraordinary organization in the field, we developed a new idea of a museum building, which is the depot, which is this one. Without being too emphatic, it's a radical new concept of how a museum building should be. Basically, the depot carries all the behind the curtains activities that usually a museum does. So all the preparations of an exhibition, restoration, conservation studies, all the storage of the collection are visible, visible by the public. So to enter the depot, you see an activity of people working towards their end result, which is the exhibition, which doesn't happen usually in the depot, but somewhere else. And I think it's, in terms of legacy, it's quite extraordinary to be able to expand this notion of heritage of a collection. And it was an extremely new way to present yourself as a museum to the public, which probably fits well with the contemporary cultures of social media, where the idea to have a direct conversation, a direct approach to what is, basically with no filters, to what is the end result. This is, in cultural term, was the basic foundation of how the depot came to be. To use a metaphor, I would say to enter the depot is like to enter into a restaurant, not having a meal, but enter into the kitchen and looking at everyone cooking and preparing a meal that then is, which is the exhibition that then is carried in another room. And just to show what is behind the efforts of collaborative effort of teams, architects, conservators, communication, and so on, behind an exhibition. This is what happens every day at Boijmans, and the public responds incredibly. Other museums are developing such a model: the V&A in London, the Samsung Museum in Korea, and few others. The idea of open depot becomes, I wouldn't say an urgency, but an idea which is in the programs of various museums. But being a curator is not only exhibition making, in my view. What I like about curating, that I think there are as many approaches and interpretation of being a curator than as many curators. Every curator tends to decline what is to be a curator in its own way, and this I found fascinating. So I think fundamentally being a curator is a part of a triade, of a three-part approach, which is exhibition making, which is writing and teaching. So I write besides randomly or when the occasion comes for an exhibition, essay, catalog essays, with a kind of register of writing. But I write for a national newspaper, and the supplement of Folio, which comes out every last Friday of the month. And upon invitation, my answer was that my aim was to do a newspaper, not a supplement, without journalists. So who I invite, usually curators, artists, architects, to write into newspaper, asking them for an exercise of simplifying the writing, which doesn't mean, which is an easy exercise. Usually, Brancusi used to say that simplicity is complexity resolved. So there is an effort in trying to find non-academic terms only for the sake of communicating to the outside. Sometimes art, especially contemporary art, tends to live within inner rules, inner language, inner regulations that they don't help a diffusion and a dialogue, which, as we said, is at the core of culture. And then there is teaching. Teaching on one side, when you teach, you are sapping the energy you have for your own work, but at the same time, I would say that usually you hear that teaching is a very altruistic activity because you exchange, fair enough. But I think also teaching is really for yourself, first and foremost, because it's when you have time to think outside of the professional demands of your office. And so when you teach, you go through 2 or 3 problems in a semester and not 25 problems in a day as a museum director. And so this keeps your brain working in a different rhythm. So, and I personally think that teaching is a fundamental part of curatorial activity, which can be done not necessarily as a professor, but in a personal way. And academies also are understanding this, which I think it's wonderful. A year ago, I came back to Rome to be artistic director of Maxi, which I would define as the only contemporary monument in Rome. In the city of monuments, we have one contemporary monument, which is the result of the vision of Zaha Hadid, who thinks big. So she thought in more than architectural terms, in urbanistic terms. So the site, which is, and the work goes way beyond the building, transformed the quartiere, the area, the Flaminio area, crossing a whole neighborhood, and this gives us a number of informations which I think they fit with the time of today. The building was completed in 2010. It was conceived in the late 90s, but it was completed in 2010. I think way before its time. And now with the renewing approach to museums that we are living in, I feel privileged to be director of an institution of a moment when a museum is demands for a porous activity. And so what I love about museum is that fundamentally they are a radical place of opportunities, of creativity, and also of invention, versus the etymological idea of a museum, therefore the house of muses, where you have this idea of immobility of legacy that you transmit through centuries. Things have changed, and they've changed radically. There have been then some accelerations recently, also from social revolutions that happened, for example, in the United States, and this change is being applied in this time. So by definition, the place of a museum is a place of activity. And the first interpretation I wanted to give was more to focus on the public, on the transmission of the public rather than on objects. So The exhibition program, of course, is fundamental. The legacy of the collection you build is also important. But if you don't have not a public, but publics, at plural, the exercise is not complete. So my first emphasis was really to work on two fundamental aspects that they don't change with seasons. It's the building and it's the public that inhabit the building. To make one step backward, the first open museum, the Open Museum City in 2014 hosted a performance with the museum completely empty. Many people tend to judge Zaha Hadid signature, architectural signature, as a sculpture, as a place which is not particularly open to generosity in terms of hosting a diversity of curatorial approaches rather than a monument in itself. Maybe that's also, and for the beauty and the athleticism, I would say, of this building, the first presentation of the museum wasn't an exhibition, but was the museum itself. So the museum presented itself to the public, and then it entered into a program. So Un Museo in Movimento, the museum as a place that is inhabited by people, and it's could be understood through an idea of motion. So this is just a short presentation of the museum, a place to question the role of the arts. And that's quite fundamental, because I think that nobody knows exactly what art is. And we shouldn't be afraid to be embarrassed of not to answer to such a difficult question. Neither do I. I don't know what art is, because art changes its definition constantly. And that's the thing, that's the beauty of it. Art is capable of negating itself. That's why avant-garde exists. The definition of avant-garde is new movement that exists regardless to the past. And so working in art, I think, is a very effective way to work out of a protocol, because art exists by chopping the head of what was before you in a certain way. And that's what it maintains its vitality. And I think that's beautiful. So my way of looking and seeing what artists are relevant is very general. I never thought to specialize myself in new media art, even because if they're new, they won't be new tomorrow, or in specific sculpture. I have some personal inclinations, but generally I wouldn't define a specificity. Usually I was, especially by American colleagues, so what's your specialty? Art. So we see. And so art changes generally. And so what I look at society and situations in terms of economy, technology, societal questions, and I look at everything that's happening in human culture, in philosophy, in art, film, literature, and the program of a museum such as the Maxi, which is a program of museum art of 21st century, is a wider approach of what contemporary art is. I don't think we can define contemporary art just in terms of painting, sculpture, film, photography, and architecture. I started to expand the notion of contemporary art to performative arts, to theater, to dance, to music, which always existed in museums, but usually as public programs, as events, while we're trying, and that's what we are working on, to absorb them in our identity. So to have an expanded approach to what a museum to be. So the Maxi changes his perspective. So it shifts from the focus to the visitor, as I said, and listens to multiple voices of our contemporaneity. And again, I really feel privileged that I feel it's the right time for changes that some years ago would have seen as experimental, while I'm far by the only one doing that. So it's part of a general change. One first approach was the building, which being so problematic in a way, and the idea of the Adid is usually to overlap the inside and outside. So we have a piazza that was later entitled Piazza Alighiero Boetti, and a hall. And the piazza responds some, despite its vastity, to some moments of cohesion and intimate moments, while the internal hall really looks like an indoor piazza. So this communication between the two, I found it interesting, and we will apply a change to the outside, which is a kingdom of mineral world. We have stones, cement. So we have invited a landscape architect. I would say the landscape architect, which is Gilles Clément. Maybe some of you have heard of him. He's a French botanist. He theorized the idea of the third landscape, or the spontaneous garden, and all the parts of white stone will be substituted by living plants, not plants that respond to a human intervention, but more creating the conditions to have other living elements into the outside, while the hall will become a stage where every Wednesday the museum will have a late opening that will host performative art in extended way. So everything that carries a beginning and an end, can be a film, can be a concert, can be a dance performance. Therefore, to create a momentum, a shared momentum, as opposed to the stability and the duration of an exhibition, which, as we know, lasts between 3, 4, and up to 6 months generally. So the whole will have some radical editing to host a public, to be a place for the public to be. Maybe we will have visitors who don't necessarily come to Maxi to see an exhibition, but probably to hang out, and to have this transformation is for us fundamental. So within the understanding of the building, which I repeat is fundamental, because it's the hardware you work on. The first exhibition, which was called Ambienti, Environment by Women Artists, from 1956 to 2010, assembled 3 galleries, Gallery 2, Gallery 3, and Gallery 4. Therefore, all the first floor of the building was create a continuity. So all the editing and all the walls and the fractions which came to be over the years in the building were taken out to let the architecture breathe. The original design by the Adid was revealed towards an idea of continuity. So this exhibition is still on, by the way, until Sunday. is focusing on the idea of the environment, which is not art as an object, but art as a space, and art as a space to be completed needs the presence of the public. If an artwork, a sculpture, a painting exists itself, even if it's stored for 100 years in the dark somewhere, but it still exists, an ambiente is a definition by Lucio Fontana in 49, ambiente, is only completed when it's activated by the presence of the public. So therefore, with this first exhibition, there was a way to say we need the public to exist. And it wasn't a call for raise numbers. It was just a way to level a conversation, a horizontal conversation. So the public is fundamental in the not just in understanding the competition of for the work to exist. It needs to be alive. This is a work. This is a work by Alexandra Kazuba, which was first presented in San Francisco in 1975 in the Rainbow Show. This is a work by Swiss artist Pipilotti Rist from 1994. And the exhibition from the 50s until 2010 reveals over the decades participatory work as ambient. This is Judy Chicago, Feather Rooms, and this is Nanda Vigo, where again the work is only completed with the public. The year, the end year of the exhibition, 2010, has two meanings. First is an homage to the building. So Zaha Hadid is in the checklist. So there is a moment of voids and the label stating Zaha Hadid work. So after 16, 17, 18 environment, you find yourself in the bigger environment as an artwork, which is Zaha Hadid. And also 2010 happens to be the year where Instagram was founded. So in a way it is a commentary that there are these immersive rooms today, which unfortunately they're called immersive museums. They're wonderful places of spectacle, but I think they have nothing to do with museum. And this exhibition shows that all these great artists thought of participatory interactive way before the selfie and the digital era. So to mark the 2010 is to mark, to underline how art usually comes first, sometimes comes so much ahead that people forget, but then is distilled through time and then there drops into society, and then there is a final result. This idea of dialogue was also expressed with the language. So this text is the wall text of the exhibition. So the museum addressed to you. It's very simple, very clear, rather pragmatic. Maybe because I look a lot of at the public attitude. I don't think, I think we need to accompany these changes also with the change of language, similar to what I previously say on a newspaper. So to address directly and to express doubts, whereas avoid the idea that you come to a museum to receive enlightenment and knowledge, but also to share some questions. The museum is a place for questions first and foremost, then answers. Then besides the activity of the exhibition experience, there is the catalog, and the catalog is another. It's a solitary activity, is reading, is research. We have a 620 pages catalog for this exhibition, but it comes next to it. It comes for a fewer public and for the one who are interested in a different way or in a deeper way. So this is the language that we're adopting to make people aware of themselves. I will introduce also questions. For example, in the labels of explanatory labels of singular works, if you add the question as a reader, first you feel your presence because it's addressing to you, and also the tone changes from assertivity to dialogue. And that I think makes triggers the curiosity of the public. Basically, this exhibition wants to find a balance between two infamous reactions that the general public has in contemporary exhibition. That I see they jump from "I don't understand" to I could have done that. So I think it's interesting to find a balance between two radical positions. Another exhibition which is now on view, we have different galleries, and therefore the chance to create an array of what an exhibition can be. And so this exhibition is by Giovanni Anselmo, and it treats the space with a new exhibition design. So there is the artwork and the architecture in dialogue, period. There is something wrong with the image. You can have a sense from this image, and how the room is free from any addition rather than the art. And that's another model of exhibition we are developing. A third model is the opposite. Not exhibition design, but full scenography. So in this exhibition called Passeggiate Romane, as an architect, we invited a scenographer, film scenographer, Dante Ferretti, very experienced. He has worked with Fellini and Pasolini, some landmark moments of the film, the Italian film Legacy, and he reconstructed a Roman street, and the scenography was thought to host not actors but artworks. We invited three important institutions in Rome, one for ancient art, Museo Capitolini, Museo Galleria Borghese, for Baroque, for Renaissance and Baroque, and Galleria Nazionale d'Arte Moderna for modern art. We selected a number of artworks which were in the depot, so we brought them to light and inserted in this phantasmagoria idea of a city. So you have cars, you have trash, you have graffitis, and the artworks. So that was a way to show a third way how to understand what the building is capable of, and how an exhibition, how different exhibitions are possible. So the aim is that a single public cannot like all of three, so that's personal taste. But the institution aims to create, as I said before, publics, different publics. And besides this, we have two different prices. The Maxi Bulgari prize, so promotes young Italian artists, so it's the national prize. In Holland, it's called the Prix de Rome. So it's more or less equivalent. We have three finalists that will, from October 24, will present a newly commissioned project, and then we'll have a final winner, and the work will be then acquired by the museum and be part of the collection. And the other prize is the architect prize. As you know, Maxi is half an art institution and half an architectural institution, which gives incredible ideas of connection of the two disciplines. And so the winner of these prize builds a one-to-one scale, a real pavilion that is functional to host the summer at Maxi, where the program comprises a series of concert, book presentations, dialogues in the building designed by the winners. This building particularly has water, which was very well welcomed in this bloody summer. So it worked quite well, and it's still up for a few weeks, and then we'll have another prize. So the prize is always part of in a certain way of the program itself, and also gives opportunity to a younger generation to be part of a national museum whose scope is also to work with different generations, but precisely in our case with the contemporary language. How are we doing with time? Okay. Speaking in terms of different publics and the slightly different agenda we are proposing at Maxi, the idea is also to shift some resources for acquisitions to educational program. Educational programs, as we know, they interact with public, and they are a way to create a membrane between younger generation, try to filter an understanding to a program that has to speak to connoisseurs and a general public. But as a younger generation, activities are rather important, and we have summer camps for kids and so on. And on the other side, we are giving important funds to the Office of Accessibility, which is the office interested in different types of disabilities, how they can reach out to a museum, how can they have access to our program. So the approach in this sense is not to correct, therefore to think of an exhibition and then to build a ramp for wheelchairs, for example, but to think from day first on design and understanding of an exhibition we're developing of the different publics. Also because certain aspect of immobility or disabilities, they can be also mirrored in different people. For example, if I have a broken arm or if I'm carrying my child, still I carry a sort of non-full ability. And therefore, this understanding of to have full access of what we're doing shouldn't be a reparation, but should come from the beginning. It's wonderful to think in these broader terms, it also looks much better because you don't have an addition or a correction to something you have thought, and it just gives a general wonderful impression of porosity and greater accessibility. And finally, the public program is rather active. Almost every day we have some activities. There is not much funds for it, I have to say, but at the same time, the presenting a talk, a dialogue, or a book is just a matter of work, and it doesn't demand so many resources. So our public program, is rather active. And I would like also to end with also to speak in more concrete terms in terms of fundings, because there are some enormous negative pressures on museums nowadays. So the first one is funding. As we see private funding, which has been incredibly important for museums, especially in some Anglo-Saxon countries, but also in Central Europe. But private funding are going into private museums more and more. Some private museums have been built, and maybe that's fine, but also that's problematic. So I think that has to do, of course, with narcissism, and it has to do with wanting to be someone, and to instead of help the community to show the capacities of one individual. Maybe it's part of the culture of selfie in a way. So I think there is a less of collective good in a way, and that makes our work even more important, even more poignant and decisive in this period. And so this business is also has to do also with the digital age, because numbers are not as before, and that pushes us to find different ways. Things are possible. Everything becomes more expensive, even developing an exhibition. So finding different models, finding economy of means are general responsibilities. So again, it's a time of general understanding that a blockbuster is far from being the only way to attract the public. You can also play on a different ground, and that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you so much. It's really inspiring.
Thank you.
Really inspiring. Yeah, louder. Okay. Sì. Grazie.
Volentieri.
We've got a half hour left for our program. Scusa?
Students are very welcome. Otherwise, all was a failure.
A casa sì. Okay. Okay, scusa.
For
the
streamers.
Yes, for the streamers.
We have millions.
For the stream. Yeah, we're using these for you. We have a half hour, and the plan is to have a dialogue, and I have lots of questions for Francesco. Although I have to say you answered some of them already. So I have to adjust them, and I will. But is there a question from the audience before we begin our dialogue? No?
Yes, we have the educational office is divided in three. Basic is division by ages. So we have the primary age. So we talk to schools and we invite schools every day. So they come and we have, so the primary activity is to see the exhibition first with one of our member of the educational program and the teacher. And after the visit, we go into the educational room to not to mimic, but then to give the feel to the children. Because what I found extraordinary is that just like artists, children have a constant creative activity. Then they lose it, and only the artists keep it. But the children, they draw every day. That's the way of expression. Then you take a different route, and but children, so not. I won't speak in qualitative terms, but children have an artist activity. They are artists, and therefore they need. After absorbing and seeing, they need to do and to respond in a pragmatic way. I proposed an exhibition for children, which was called Alles Kids, which is a play of words in Dutch. And every 2 rooms, you had a room where children would do. Otherwise, a child would say, okay, that's beautiful, but what about me? I can do it. So that's part of and that was already there when I arrived a year ago. And then we have teenagers and universities. So of course the activities are different and but we value these very much. What I did in terms of ticketing is that I introduced the free ticket until 18 years old. So the administrative office wasn't happy at all, and so we have very good numbers of attendance that don't reflect the incasso, but that's your seeding for the future. So.
I think what I was really struck by sort of the revolutionary approach that you're taking to this museum, and some of the sort of ideas that were surrounding the Maxi when it was first built. You talk about the museum as a place of motion, and that it requires a public to really use it. And I remember when the Maxi opened in 2010, and the architect insisted at the opening that it be empty. It didn't yet really have a collection, and it was the jewel. And since that time, there's been a tension, but I think before your time, I should say, the idea of tension between the building and the exhibition and the artist, and what is on display. How does the museum work with a very imposing monument, which is, this building? But I think the questions that you're asking, there is a legacy. You've inherited a monument, and it's a monument. You've inherited a monument within the context of Rome. It's not old, it's new, but it's a monument. And in a way, you're deconstructing it. How are you using it? You're also, the museum has 2 sections. It has a section on art and it has a section on architecture, but you're not displaying, well, maybe you are, architectural models, but you're actually building architecture on site. And you're also, with this current exhibition, Ambienti, you're creating environments, you're putting environments on display as art. So you're mixing it up. And your sort of your foundation is this requirement of use. And you talk about the need for the audience to make the museum come alive. And it's just really interesting. And so the idea of legacy, how does that come in? Well, I think it seems to me that you have an inheritance, but you're kind of creating a legacy. But you're doing all these kinds of things. And I kept wondering, as you're talking about the projects and as you're talking about your new garden in the piazza, what would the architect think? And
it's a very good question. Thank you. Well, first, the strong signature of Zaha Hadid work and style made me soon understand that there is no way to go against it. It carries such a strong personality, which is at the opposite of what a white cube is. A white cube wants to be as neutral as possible and the place of endless possibilities. Therefore, here there is an extremely strong character, which doesn't mean that it limits. It can inform, but you need to follow this flow. If you try to go against and build and try to rebuild a white cube, it wouldn't work. It's just too strong, and that's the genius of these artists. So within this idea of motion, I like to call it an athletic museum. And the idea of motion, there is also an idea of porosity of different disciplines. So as you well said, and maybe I wasn't too clear with Ambienti. Ambienti actually is an exhibition that carries art, architecture, and design all in once. And it was a way as a first exhibition to be a sort of manifesto that one wouldn't exist with the other. For maybe architecture exists without art, but art doesn't exist with architecture. And this is as far as we are concerned. As far as the period we're living is concerned, and that's why I think I feel privileged and lucky to work in this time. I think we are stepping out of the long legacy of a white cube as the epitome and the model of exhibition making, which basically pairs with modernism. There wouldn't be modernism, I think, without a white cube. And I think we are, maybe modernism is ending. Who knows? We never know. We tried with postmodernism, but it's still the same problems, I think. So I think if you don't look at the object, the art, but at the space that surrounds it, maybe that's an approach to look further or to dig further. And Zaha offers this in a tremendous way. Building this building was built in a different era with the different means and a different understanding of ecology. So I think if you interpret it but don't use it for your own sake, I think she would still be happy, because otherwise, if she's not happy, the building tells you very clearly. So to build a garden within the same design, I think is just a way to respect that legacy and made it develop in a time which is right for in a moment which is right for these times. and for the outside. And for the inside, really, as I said, the idea is either to work on exhibitions without an exhibition design, so not to create, so to follow this sinuosity of walls, the demand for an idea of mobility, and or at the opposite, to create a full scenario and a full scenography, which in a way takes you somewhere out, but no way in the middle, which is what has been done so far, and the strong character of the building tends to reject it. So the legacy is incredibly important. So the attention we're giving to the building shows how it is impossible to do without it.
It's fascinating. Okay, sorry, streamers. I want to shift a little the topic in terms of the museum and legacies and history, keeping on that topic, but shifting the subject a little. The Maxi opened in 2010, and it's part of its mission, if I understand correctly, was to reflect the chronological time where the National Museum of Modern Art ended. So it is the National Museum of 21st Century Art, and it was intended to be a continuation of the NYAM, which is across the street from the KNIR, which opened actually almost 100 years exactly before, in 1911, for the festival of the 50th anniversary of the Italian state. And so what is the connection between the NYAM, and what is the distinction?
I think here there are two factors that can be discussed. One is the identity of the museum itself, and one is the identity of the directors, because then it comes also as a way of communicating. So far, as a spectator, there wasn't much of a dialogue, and the contemporary program was part of the preoccupations of both museums. Directorship changed in both museums, and we tend to see as siblings. And so whenever the NYAM interest ends, this is where Maxi begins. Of course, there are overlaps. It's like with borders; they're not never clear. There are interventions also some kilometers from one to another. So there is maybe 1 or 1.5 generations of art that can be overlapped, that maybe could give ideas to an exhibition, maybe a thematic exhibition in 2 parts, NYAM and Maxi, for example. But in a way, the idea is that Maxi takes over when NYAM study and interest ends. Also, as you well said, NYAM is almost 100 years. Maxi is not even 15. The collection of NYAM is arguably the best collection of modern art in Italy, and is outstanding. The art collection of Maxi is a toddler. It's very extremely young, and it needs to be built and needs to be developed with all the potentials we have to create new routes. Therefore, the legacy and identity of Nyam is completely different than ours, and which reflects maybe the modern era and the contemporary era. But also to make some names, maybe artists from Arte Povera period, I'm talking about Yannis Kounellis, Giovanni Anselmo that we saw, Alighiero Boetti could be the link between one and the other, because for Nyam, they're part of the collection, and they represented an incredibly fervent moment of a modern era. For us, they are key to illustrate some influences they have on the younger generations. So there are pillars for a beginning, and not finalizations of an era. So to add to that, the proximity of the two helps, and also the striking difference of the two buildings helps. We have a neoclassicist classicist building and a concrete design, which couldn't be more different. And also, Nyam has stairs. So you have you ascend towards knowledge, towards an understanding of museum, which is part of history. We don't have stairs to enter. It's on the ground. It's actually a continuation of a street. So the two identities are incredibly different. Therefore, they can create a good connection of continuation. If they would be very similar, it would be problematic.
It's a really interesting answer. And I keep thinking about you mentioned this idea of avoiding the museum as a place to receive knowledge, and the neoclassical building of the Nyam was built as a place to receive knowledge, and as the temple. So it's very interesting. I have one last question, which is also on the topic of buildings, and I'm bringing us back to the Netherlands a bit. And I just I was struck by your answer to me a couple of questions ago when you said, if our plans at the Maxi are not working, the building will tell us, the building will let us know. And I'm wondering if the depot building has that same kind of power, or if the power of the depot is different, a different kind of engagement with the director or the curator than the Maxi building.
Well, first I would start from its appearance and therefore its materials. One is concrete, the other is mirrors. So mirrors were extremely intelligent solutions found by MVDRV, the Rotterdam studio, because the building is 40 meters high, and it would have been a bit of a punch in the eye for the landscape and for the urbanism of the central Rotterdam. By being reflective, it becomes almost transparent on a physical way. On a conceptual way, you can argue that it reflects by carrying and displaying the collection, which is belongs to the state, to the public. It reflects the public itself, and so there is the idea of mirroring. So there are no windows. You can see from the inside to the outside, obviously, but not the other way around. But at the same time, there is, so it's very mysterious from the outside, but at the same time, this idea of reflection, and it wants to represent you in a conceptual way. Also, from the outside of the depot, you have no clue what the inside could be. In Maxi, the shapes you see in the building, they're exactly representative of the galleries, which, by the way, is the opposite way that Frangari works, because the inside and outside in Frangari, they're not equivalent. In Zadi, there is this honesty in replicating the inside and outside, not just for the example I brought to the garden and the hall, but also the shape of the building is informs you to the inside. So there is a sense of transparency as well there, in a way. And but then fundamentally, to answer more precisely to your question, in terms of challenges, the depot is a place of activities. So you have offices, you have deposit where staff from the public operates. So it's drawn to functionality at its utmost. And that was the core idea and the core necessity. The museum here is a place of possibilities of what you don't know yet.
Yeah. Fascinating. Fascinating. I think this was an amazing lecture, and also a lecture that really brings us to it brings us to the current pulse of museums and their changing role in this very moment. And I applaud what you're doing. It's wonderful to hear about. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's thank you for coming. Thank you for the audience. Thank you to all of you. And please come back November 22nd for Francesco Cappelletti, director of the Borghese Gallery. And have a good evening. Thank you very much.